Perfect.
Go ahead. Okay. Is all our tech? Okay. Oh, what's that? What is that? What is that? Or is that okay? Can you hear? Linda, can you hear up there?
I can hear.
Okay, good.
However, the picture is blurry.
Okay. All right, we'll let them know that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Chico Unified School District Board of Trustees for September 16th, 2020. I would request that everybody please turn off their cell phones that are people who are taking part in this meeting here. And we were in closed session prior to gathering here, and what I would like to report out is that a vote was taken during closed session on a request for payment of attorney's fees from Ricks Road Law Firm of $9,200. A vote was taken in favor of the payment was Lando, Hovey, Robinson. Against payment was Griffin and Kaiser. So the motion passed, and that took place. If you would please join me, we are going to stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and to
republic
the
for
republic for
which
which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty
with
and justice for
and
all.
justice for all.
And if everyone would please continue to stand. This week, we lost one of our dear teachers, Janice Kuhn, the choral instructor at Chico Senior High School. So I would appreciate if we could all just have a moment of silence. Thank you very much. I'd like to begin this meeting then with announcements, and I would specifically like to ask Mr. Doug Williams, if he is on the Zoom, to please let us know how things have gone at Chico Senior High School. We understand that some help and some assistance was put in place for students and teachers as well.
Yes, thank you, school board and Chico Unified School District staff and people tuning into the meeting. It's been a very rough week. Obviously, this event started on the weekend, and at that point, we didn't have much information, but we sent out some information on Sunday night. The last 3 days have really involved around creating support mechanisms for students and for faculty alike. So we have had 3 different levels of virtual therapy occurring in this COVID environment. The first round in the morning, we obviously called every student in Ms. Kuhn's class and talked to them. That was done by our counselors, BCOE counselors, and counselors shared who are professional therapists within the region and within our district. I'd like to thank all those people who basically joined in a communal effort to come to our aid. In addition, I Zoomed every one of her classes the first 2 days, and basically took control kind of fielding questions from the kids and tried to ask them in an appropriate way to the best of my ability. And in those meetings with me were also other licensed therapists. Every day we have had, in the first day, it was a 1 o'clock Zoom therapy link that our assistant principals emailed out to every student in her classes to join. And we had quite a few students join and some parents as well. We also had former students that contacted me and wanted to know if they could join those therapy sessions. And of course, I opened those up to those individuals as well. Miss Kuhn was a comet of an individual. She walked in a room and everybody had their eyes on her. She just spread sparkle and joy and her influences across the globe, really. After those virtual meetings, now what we have going on is every morning at 8 o'clock, an ongoing Zoom meeting takes place for 3.5 hours, and different therapists come in at different times. The reason we've done this is so students, if they feel more comfortable, could contact fellow students and say, hey, let's join today at 9 together, so they can feel some kind of companionship in those meetings. Also in those meetings, thank you, Mr. Tim Karras, Mr. Brandon Kessler, we're able to provide breakout therapy. So as the students join, we ask them if they would like to go to an even smaller Zoom breakout, one-on-one with a trauma counselor or with a group of 3 of their friends. And that's been taking place. And of course, we're logging all this information, and then we're going to respond back to the families to see how we can improve, and also if they need further follow-up from other support systems within our county. Today, we also did a moment of silence, which was very difficult on our quad for our staff. Our staff has been unbelievable, but our teachers are hurting as well. And so that was at 11:45 today. I said a few words, and we had a moment of silence for Ms. Kuhn. In front of our school, there's kind of a grassroots goodbye to Ms. Kuhn being chalked on our sidewalk with flowers and red lipstick that reminds us all of her. However, I think the impact of walking by that daily by our staff is going to be significant. So we are going to set up a chalk wall next to our marquee with a message to Miss Kuhn and to the community. And if people would like to go to the grass, because it's outside of the closed campus, and write on the wall something appropriate or a message they remember about Miss Kuhn, or set down something, we're going to have a standing area there for a week or so. As I get information from their family, because I'm trying to be very respectful of their family's wishes, because they're going through obviously a huge trauma as well. And I know people want information, but we also have to be respectful of the family and their privacy. I will leave you with this. 2 things I heard in a meeting. The first one is just what a joy it was to be around Miss Kuhn. The second one was a student that said, Miss Kuhn always used to say, if you're struggling to find the right words in class, or you don't have an ability to complete an assignment, or your voice is shot and you can't participate, you can at least try to be the nicest person in the room. And I think that has such an impact that as we go through this trauma, that I would just ask everybody to be kind to themselves and be kind to others, because that's really a message that she lived through. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk. If anyone would like to talk to me in person or come by the school and find out exactly all the other levels of therapy and support we have, I'd be happy to talk to anybody anytime. And I'm going to put together an actual, for lack of a better word, an action item menu to post as well on our website, so people can access resources, but also see what's going on daily. Thank you very much. And hopefully your prayers and kind thoughts, or whatever positive energies you choose to use, will continue to come our way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Obviously, our thoughts go out to the Kuhn family and all of the friends and loved ones. I also want to thank Chico High for doing an absolutely fabulous job in the worst of circumstances. The entire school is hurting, our students are hurting, the staff is hurting, and yet they've rallied to be there for our kids. So thank you, Doug, and your counseling and administrative team, and all of the teachers who have rallied to be there.
Thank you. For another announcement, Dr. Kaiser.
Yes, so the census has not yet been changed in terms of its deadline, so the deadline is the end of this month. Everyone who was born and physically located in Butte County on April the 1st counts, and the estimates are it's worth $10,000 a person over the 10 years. So if you haven't done the census yet, please, there's websites, there's phone numbers. We want to urge you to do that. However, right now, we're facing local elections. The League of Women Voters of Butte County is setting up the candidate interviews. Everything will be on Zoom, but we're setting them all up, and you can submit questions for the candidates 3 days before their presentations. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that the first set of interviews will be for the Chico City Council candidates. Now remember, this is the first time that we've had district-based elections, so it's very different than before. So you can send your questions in. The interviews are going to be posted on Monday evening, September the 21st. So we need you to send them to the League of Women Voters BC with your questions. There are 10 candidates for the 4 seats, and the votes are in districts 1, 3, 5, and 7. So the interviews are going to happen this Thursday and Friday, and all interview questions will be given to all candidates. And then, like I said, they'll be posted. The second part of this is that we will be, as a league, arranging interviews for the Paradise Town Council, for all the school districts that are having elections. And again, these will be sequential, and you can send in questions to the league that you would like to be asked of the candidates. We are also doing voter registration at the farmers market. So if you haven't registered yet, that's a really critical thing. The last part of this is, as everyone knows, we've had another dramatic crisis with huge areas of our county burning, people being evacuated. They may not be able to go back to their homes. There may be no home. And the post offices in a number of those areas have been closed. So it's very, very important that if you're going to have a mailing address different than the address that you were using to receive your ballot in the mail, which are going to go out in October, early October, then you need to contact the Hall of Records, Butte County, and get your mailing address corrected. So that's the critical part of this, so that your ballot will actually get to you. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other announcements?
I do.
Yes.
So
Ms.
we
Daly.
are once again facing frustrations with our Zoom. So we had a call-in line set up for our speakers from items from the floor and speakers on agenda items. The audio on the Zoom is not coming through. So we have posted new directions, and we want to encourage everyone to go to the Chico Unified website, chicousd.org. We are going to we will call the people who submitted speaker cards. The phone number, if you want to announce the phone number that will be coming to them so that they know what to be looking for.
Thank you, Superintendent Staley. The phone number I'll be calling from is 530-774-5429. Again, 530-774-5429. The speaker cards we have so far are Mark Owen, Ryan Crosby, and Eric Oberly. For items from the floor, we have from the elementary waiver, Matt Tennis, Heidi Dossman, Jody Taylor, and for,
LCP.
thank you, for LCP, we have Matt Tennis, Kelly McGregor, and Aaron Isherwood. So those folks do not need to do anything. We have your numbers, and I'll be calling you.
So if there is time, and we certainly hope there will be, after we hear from the speaker cards, then we will go to those people that have submitted their name to staff announce? Staff, where are they submitting it to? To public comment. I don't have my Chico USD up in front of me. Submit your name, the item number you would like to address, and your phone number, and we will call you in order as well. So that's, go to chicousd.org and submit your name, phone number, agenda item you would like to address. Thank you.
Okay, one announcement that I want to make is that this week we've been hearing a lot of kind of disturbing news, and there seems to be a lot of swirl around social media. And plus, with students being home a lot, you know, I would think there's even more of an uptick in use of social media. And I just wanted to make parents aware that there are some resources out there if you are concerned about your students' social media use or the impact it might be having on them or their mental health. There is an organization called Humane Tech, and it's humanetech.com, and they have resources to help you possibly impact or limit the social media or understand what the possible impacts might be on your teen or your adolescent. And there's also an excellent video that can now be seen on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And that explains a lot about what the impacts on children are and possible effects on mental health. So I highly recommend that. I think in this time when there's a lot of people indoors and not being able to see people, there's more reliance on that, and there are some dangers associated. Okay, so we will move on now to our consent. Oh, excuse me, we will have an update. Did we want to do this? Do we want to take the items from the floor? Do you want to give some time for people to? Okay. Okay, while you're in the process of doing that, let me just remind you of the rules that we have regarding this. Items from the floor are very specifically items that do not appear on our agenda tonight. So if you are speaking to something that is on our agenda, this is not the place to discuss it. You will discuss that item at the time that we'll allocate for that particular item. So the conversation under items from the floor needs to be something not on our agenda. And we are not able to respond in any way to items from the floor. And that's 3 minutes each speaker. We will have 10 minutes, and then I will check in with the board to see if we're going to go further with this. So anyhow, okay, we can begin.
Okay, Mark Owen, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
All right. My name is Mark Owen. I'd like to thank the board members for their volunteered service. I respect the time and energy you've put into our schools here in Chico. I know all of you are doing what you feel is best to bring a good education to our children. With that said, Edgenuity is not the best. We can and have to do better. I have 2 daughters enrolled in Chico Unified Schools, a sophomore at Chico High, an 8th grader at Bidwell. For the past few weeks, I've watched my daughters struggle with Edgenuity. The poor replacement of an education system has taken my honor roll students to failing students. I've watched one of my daughters go from completely self-motivated, engaged in her classwork, to lackadaisical and not engaged at all. My other daughter, who has always been a good, confident student, is now overwhelmed, stressed, and unsure of herself. Edgenuity is not working. Besides our children getting a subpar education, it is also messing with their self-confidence. Something needs to change. Face-to-face learning would be best. I understand this may be out of your control, but using technology like Google Classroom and Zoom with teachers teaching our children and not using Edgenuity is in your control. I'm sure I'm not the only concerned parent. I thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Owen. We will move on to Mr. Crosby. Brian?
Hello, it's Ryan.
Hi, Ryan. This is John Shepard from Chico Unified School District, and I'm going to unmute you, and you'll be addressing the school board.
Okay, I muted my computer, so
Perfect. You're
let me
ready?
know if you can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you guys. First off, obviously struggling with the Zoom thing, that seems to be a problem across the nation. So I appreciate you guys being creative and still getting parents' voices onto the board. So really appreciate your effort there. I want to start man, the information around the teacher, I mean, how sad, obviously kind of a testament to the times we're in. I mean, I don't know the things around it, but I just want to say that I know everybody involved here at the board with our teachers. I know that everybody's trying to make decisions that are for the best for our kids, and we just all have different ways and different ideas how to get there. So I guess I just want to start with that. I truly appreciate the efforts and the things that you guys have to go through to try to make decisions for a vast majority of people. So I appreciate it, and I truly appreciate our teachers. So I'm part of a group, Parent Advocates for School in-Person Learning. And, obviously we were for the waivers for the elementary school kids. And honestly, we were looking for some solutions for 6 through 12 kids. Kind of like the gentleman before me said, ingenuity, is definitely a struggle for kids. I think the connection problems, there's a lot of connection problems. There's audio corruption. And I think really, I feel like we're benching our best asset, which is the teacher. And again, we're trying to adapt to the times, but unfortunately, there's not a ton of instruction now that's coming from the teachers. And so I feel like we're benching our best asset and really the thing that we want to connect with our students. I think it's hard to control class in that environment. The teachers are doing the best they can, but it's a really difficult thing. And so it's messing with the success of the students. I think there's too many platforms and activities. One of my sons at Bidwell, he does spend till about 7 o'clock at night. And I know Mr. McKay, I think it was, or one of the principals said, just not to allow them to do it. But I think in the end, we want to make sure that they get a good grade, right? We want to make sure that they're getting the information, that they're understanding the material, because frankly, we don't get this year back. So there's body fatigue, there's headaches, there's sitting and watching and staring at a screen for a long time. I think a big one too is isolation from friends. And I kind of feel like there's some depression setting in, and I think that's happening across the board. And I think it's time for us to really kind of look for some creative solutions. So to me, I feel like they're a two-pronged approach, right? We have to figure out how to creatively work with the systems we have in place today, right? How do we get better at that? How do we get opinions from the teachers of how that can be improved? But I think second is we have to begin to press the state, right? So thinking of creative ways that we can get in front of the state with new ideas of how we could possibly open these schools.
Okay,
I know last time we
Mr.
talked,
Crosby,
we talked a lot about
sorry to interrupt you, but your time is up.
Mr. Crosby, your time's up, so I'm going to go ahead and hang up. We do appreciate your feedback. Thank you. Okay, I'm calling Eric Oberly.
Wi-Fi subscriber you have called is not.
Should I try again?
We are currently trying to reach Eric Oberly.
Hello, is this Eric?
Eric?
Yes, is this Eric?
Eric, if you are watching, I think we do not have the correct number for you, perhaps? Okay, we've tried twice.
If Mr. Eric Oberly, we do have the phone number that you submitted, which we tried calling. That did not work. We do have another opportunity for comments from the floor. So if you could contact us with the correct phone number, we'll be happy to put you on during that time because you did submit a speaker card.
Okay, so we still have a few moments. Are there any other, we do not have a way to do this now, do we?
They can go to public comment at chicousd.org. We've now listed that on our Chico Unified website. Right now, we do not have any others that have submitted through that mechanism,
Okay.
knowing that that is brand new. That just started at 6 o'clock tonight.
Right, okay. Okay, then. That being the case, we will move forward. The next item of business is a negotiations update. Mr. Hanlon.
So actually, negotiations is a part of the presentation tonight, so I'm going to defer until we get into the presentation, so I won't be repeating myself.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Next will be our consent calendar. Do any board members want to pull items from the consent calendar? Yes, Kathy?
I want to pull under the, I think it's under contracts. Yeah, because it's notification of items, I'm sorry. It's 1, 2, the approval of items donated to Chico Unified School District.
7.1.2?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, did anyone else have any item they'd like to pull?
No.
If not, may I have a motion?
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Okay. And Kathy, you seconded? Okay. Item was moved by Tom Lando and seconded by Dr. Kaiser. This will be for the remainder of the consent calendar, and we'll take a roll call vote. Linda, how do you vote?
Hovey, aye.
Okay, Lando?
Lando, aye.
Kaiser? Kaiser, aye. Griffin, aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. We will go back then to item 7.1.2.
I wanted to pull this to recognize 2 particular donations. Mary J. Lauderdale, $5,000 to Fairview High School, and then the Seroptimus International of Bidwell Rancho, who donated $1,125 to Fairview High School. I think sometimes people see Fairview as not the ideal school for their kid, and yet it has been extremely successful with kids that need extra help. And these donations are a validation of that and also a measure of hope. So we want to thank them very much. And with that, I move the donations.
That would be, okay, that would be item 7.1.2. That was moved by Dr. Kaiser, seconded by Eileen Robinson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I don't know if I heard you, Linda.
Aye.
Thanks. Okay. That takes care of the consent calendar. The next item is number 8, under Educational Services. It's going to be a discussion and possible action with regards to the parent and staff elementary COVID-19 waiver survey results. And that would be Mr. Karras, I believe.
Actually, I'll go ahead and start us off. The board has asked us to move forward with looking at what it would take to get elementary waivers onto our different elementary schools. And so we have a little presentation to go over where we're at this time. So first on the agenda tonight, we're going to be going over the background, the safety conditions, the parent and staff survey data, and the process that we're looking forward to moving on next. Okay. First, a little background. The California Department of Public Health back on August 3rd of 2020 announced that a waiver of the state's school reopening criteria may be available for elementary schools. However, the waiver is not within the jurisdiction of the California Department of Education or the School Board of Education, but will instead be considered by the local public health officers in consultant with the California Department of Public Health. Therefore, the California Department of Ed does not maintain a list of schools or districts that have been applied for reopening the school waivers. Additionally, only the superintendent or the head of the school is allowed to submit the waiver request to the local public health officer. Also, per the board direction, Chico Unified surveyed the parents and staff to gauge the interest in applying for a waiver. And the Chico Unified Teachers Association also administrated a staff survey, and we'll be going over those tonight.
Great.
The safety conditions. In order to have the elementary waiver considered for approval by the Butte County Public Health, Chico Unified Schools would be required to follow all state and health and safety guidelines. These include consistent small groups, 6-foot social distancing, facial coverings for we also have all the complete of the guidelines that you guys approved before for the AM/PM model that would go for any of the different stages or colors that we would go into. And those are on our website, and it's also in a bit link on here if people wanted to look at that at another time. To accommodate these requirements, elementary classes under the waiver cannot adhere to the traditional full-day schedule. So if a waiver gets passed, we cannot at this point have 30 kids or 24 or 30 or 34 go into a classroom all day. The exact schedule must be negotiated with the bargaining units, which we'll be talking a little bit more later. And the elementary waiver schedules may closely resemble the A&P model that we had discussed earlier in another board meeting, or an alternating day schedule, so we could have only half of the amount of students on our campuses at a site. And remember, these waivers are only for our elementary schools. These cannot be approved for our junior highs or our high schools. I'm gonna pass over the survey data from Tim Karras. He's the one that's been working on all the data for us, and he does a great job at that.
And before we go there, I do want to again say that if we have people that would like to address this, please go to the Chico Unified School District website and email your name, phone number, and the item you would want to address, which in this case would be the waiver. And that's publiccomment@chicousd.org. Put your name in, and we will be calling you for public comment when we get to that part of the agenda. In addition, attached to our agenda are all of the written public comments that we have already received and that the board has read on this agenda item.
Yes.
Also, I want to be able to state that Mr. Karras will be going over the survey data that we provided to our families, and then we'll have Kevin Moretti, the president of the Chico Unified Teachers Association, go over their data after that.
Great. Great.
All right, good evening. Per board direction, we sent out 3 surveys on August 27th and left them open until September 4th. One survey went out to parents of all of our elementary students. The second survey went out to certificated staff at the elementary sites, and the third survey went out to classified staff that work at any of our elementary sites. So the first data set I'm going to go over is our parent survey data. But before I go into the actual numbers, just wanted to give you a little kind of idea what those surveys looked like. Okay, at the top of the survey was information regarding the offering by the California Department of Public Health to authorize waivers as approved by the local health officers. It also listed a lot of the information that was in Mr. Marchand's portion of the presentation regarding safety protocols that needed to be in place. So we wanted people to really know what they were voting for. Okay, so we gave them a lot of information, all the information we have available currently. Oh.
Yeah. If you need to, it's really
You want me
hard.
to start over?
No, it's
Okay.
okay, just if you
Okay.
could continue, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at our parent survey data first. And we got the title cut off, but this is our parent survey. And I want to note for those in the audience that this is a little bit of a different look than was put out with the original agenda that was put out on Friday. We added the number of responses and the number of total students to the data set per board direction, and to give more context to the conversation and the meaning of these results. So on that survey, parents were asked a simple question. Given these circumstances for coming back to school in person in a limited manner, would you send your student to school for in-person learning, or would you like to keep them home for online learning? Okay, so up here, the green indicates the yeses, and the yellow indicates the nos. Before we look at the greens and the yellows too much, though, I want to point out the number of responses, 1,933 out of total students, 5,055, for a response rate of 38.2%. Each student was granted one survey entry. So in cases where 2 parents entered survey data, only 1 was taken. We also validated the data that parents entered via asking for a student ID, so we could check to make sure that those students were enrolled in our elementary schools. So we're confident that we have valid data. There were some data entry mistakes and entries for secondary students, et cetera, that were thrown out.
Mr. Karras, also if a family had 4 students, they were allowed to have 4 survey results, is that correct?
That is correct. 1 per student, regardless of how many were in the family. Okay? So overall, we see that 68.9% of parents would like to send their child back to school for in-person learning in some way, shape, or form, while 31.1% would prefer to keep them at home for online. At the site levels, and we'll get more into what's going to happen at the site levels with this data and more data to come later in the presentation, but we saw response rates that range from 16.3 all the way up to 51%. And we saw, rates as high as, yes rates as high as 77.9% at some sites. Keep in mind the sample size is fairly small, and especially in that lower range of our schools with the lower participation rates, it gets very, very small. Do we have any questions about the parent survey data?
So just to clarify, so you've got 38%. So of the 38% that participated, 68.9%.
Correct.
Okay, that's what we're looking at.
That's what
Okay,
exactly
I just
what
want to
we're looking
clarify
at.
that. Okay.
Liz,
Yes, I'm sorry, Eileen.
I'm on the I'm on the clarification bandwagon as well. So, for example, at Neil Dow Elementary, the responses were 94. Did you change the slide?
Yep, we're back.
Okay. 94 responses, which is 29% of that school site's population responding.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
Yep.
reading it correctly. Thank you.
And of the respondents, the percentages are given off to the side in the colors.
So let's just take the highest percentage, which was Shasta. They had a 77.9, but they had 236 yeses out of 639. So that's really a 37% of the people in that campus, of their students, that have said yes that we know of, that turned in the survey.
I think there's another aspect to this, though, mathematically, which is, if we want to go to Eileen's original question, so Neil Dow, we had 94 responses, but they reflect 316 kids. So when you look at the number of kids they are answering for, you know, that is, and I don't remember the total population to kneel down. I don't know if Tim,
The total population would be 316.
no, that actually go to that school.
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions here?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to the certificated staff survey. We had a much higher participation rate, 68.3% across the district, 263 out of 385 certificated staff at sites.
Classified? Is this classified?
This is certificated.
I'm sorry.
So this data set was, well, the survey was originally sent out to administrators as well. We threw out those responses for the purposes of this data display. And so it's classroom teachers, it's Title I teachers, speech therapists, all the support staff. And one thing that I want to point out to you is on the site column, down the left-hand side, it says district itinerant. Those are our teachers that move from site to site. So that would include our fine arts specialists, our music teachers, our PE teachers, et cetera.
If I may, in designing these surveys, was there room for comment as well?
There was.
Okay. Thank you. We have access to those comments? Will we see any of those later on?
We will not see those later on at the board meeting. I can easily make them available to you, though.
Thank you.
Okay, so overall, 60.1% favored, said they would like to come back and work should a waiver pass, and 39.9% said no. And you can see the variances down the list of sites. Any questions here on the certificated data? Okay, classified staff was also surveyed on pretty much the exact same survey as certificated staff with a little slight change in wording. And you can see there quite a favorable response to coming back to work, bringing kids back to school in person. So 73.1% favored coming back, and 26.9% said no. And we see kind of generally by site, the rates are fairly high. The exceptions there are Chapman and Sierra View.
Interesting.
Any questions?
No.
Yes, Tim? Am I reading correctly that on, for example, Chapman, 45% is 11 staff members, and 54% is 13
Correct.
staff members? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll move on to our Chico Unified Teachers Association survey data. They gave us a similar survey, but with more details and specific to their needs. So I'm going to ask Kevin Moretti to unmute. And Kevin, I'll flip through the slides for you.
Okay. I'm still seeing the title page. So the first three questions I asked, one was I wanted everyone's name to make sure they were actually a teacher at that site, and what site I asked them all to pick a site, and then what their position was, because I wanted to divide this out by the classroom teachers, TK through 5, and then all the others, SLPs, RSP, STC, because it occurred to me you could make this work if the classroom teachers were doing it. You could still have those other teachers doing by Zoom in the off session if we were in a AM PM. It might be a possibility. So that's why I broke it out this way. So you see the first question, I had 251 responses, and you can see the breakdown there. I asked the question a little bit differently, and you can see it up there. If you go to the next slide.
Mr. Moretti, before you
Yeah.
move on, what is the percentage of responses? 251 answered this survey, and there's about, what, 700 teachers?
No, because this is only elementary. So
Yes,
it's
so
about
how many?
335. We'll get to that slide. That'll show it when I break it
very
out.
good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet. So question 4 was just, do you want your school to apply for a waiver?
Right.
Yes or no? And if it's no, you're done. Okay, so if we could go to question 5. So then I want to know, because you might want a waiver, but question 5 was, would you be willing to add and drop kids from your roster? Because not every kid in your class, if you were teaching in person, is going to show up. So
Right.
how do we account for that? So the yeses went down from whatever they were before. I think it was 117 down to 72 of those. And then the other questions were just like, these are just what ifs. Would you still want to do it what if? So if you'll go to question 6, please. So would you be willing to move to a different grade level? Because it might work out that, all the 3rd grade teachers want to do it, but none of the 4th grade teachers want to do it. And so what would we do in that case? So that was this question. And question 7 is, what if everybody at one school wanted to do it, but nobody at the other? Would you be willing to switch schools to make it happen? And so that was the purpose of that question. So those aren't real popular ones, and certainly not as popular as people wanting to get back into a classroom with kids. So then I went by hand and broke it all out by school site, and then by position, either a classroom teacher, for lack of a better word, or a SEC, whatever. So that's what this next slide is. And this is the information that you were asking for. So if you look at the total at the bottom, so this is just with question 4. So I had 117 yeses and 127 no's and 102 no responses.
Interesting.
So 346 was the number you were looking for, Linda.
Yep. Thank you.
That was the total. So this is just breaking it out by site with those 2 groups broken out into yes and no, and then you can, it's the percent yes over here. The percent yes, and then either no or no response is it in the yes. So.
Kevin, when you are identifying Chapman other, you're talking about the teachers or that provide a range of services. They're not in a classroom.
Right. So the others on top, if you go to the bottom right there, it's Chapman TK through 5. So other is everybody that's not that. So that's the STC teacher, RSP teacher, the speech pathologist, the nurse, anybody else that's in my bargaining group that's not a TK through 5 teacher.
Understood. Yeah.
So that was my part, unless you have any questions.
Well, I'm a little concerned about the data, Kevin, if you don't mind my saying so, just because I'm looking at the Sierra View Other column, where you've got yes 3, no response 2, but the yes rate came back as 100%.
Oh, I didn't put those percents in. I can look at I sent you my original data. This is a slide
Yeah, Kevin.
district put together.
Yes, Kevin, I'll take a look at that and get an update to the board. That was me putting in the percentages.
Okay. So, Tom, I sent you my original.
I'll recheck my email, see if I can
spreadsheet.
find the other data, see if it matches up or not. Thank you.
Yeah. There was there was a question about how this data might have been different, not tonight, but I'll address it anyway. How this data might be different from the districts. And when I sent out mine, and people ask me why so many no responses, and it could be people got confused thinking I already answered this. So why am I doing a survey again? Might have been one reason. Some people misinterpreted the district's question.
Yes.
And that was in the comments that I got where they thought, they misread the question. And I sent out a clarification and Kelly sent out a clarification, but I sent my survey out after and people said, that told me they misunderstood the districts, was they were taking it as, will you teach in person or quit, is how they interpreted it, which is not what the district meant at all. So if there was variations, that might be, it was a misunderstanding on the teachers that took the district survey. And then for mine also, I sent it out as a blast email. It made it have ended up in their clutter folders, but mine closed Tuesday after Memorial Day. On Memorial Day, I sent out an individual email to everyone who hadn't voted to remind them it was closing the next day. So I'm pretty confident it didn't stay in there, that would have gone through. But those are some things that might explain the difference.
Mhm.
I think Tim can clarify the data. I do think
Yeah,
it's accurate.
I'm sorry, I was taken a little bit off guard earlier, but I want to point out the Sierra View Other and the 100% there. There was 3 yeses and 0 nos. So the percentage is not out of the total staff, it's out of the respondents.
Ah,
Right.
got it.
Do you have any other questions for me?
Anybody else have questions?
No,
for
I do
Kevin?
not. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Okay, so we're just going to go back to the process that we kind of talked about at the last board meeting and what steps that we're going through. And then, so our first process was to help our school sites and our district to send out a survey to all of our parents and all of our classified and certificated, which we have done and which you just saw the results. Also, our step 2, we were going to bring back the results to you guys tonight, which we are. And then step 3, we wanted to give, steps 3 and 4 are negotiation updates, and I'm going to kind of let Mr. Hanlon talk about slides, steps 3 and 4.
Okay. So we have met with CUTA. We met on September 10th, and we are planning on meeting every 2 weeks with that group, specifically on coming back to school in some form, either through the hybrid model when we move into, I guess, the red color, or a waiver, because those things, as you'll see as I discuss this, overlap quite a bit. We also are meeting with CSEA. We have meetings scheduled for September 24th, October 15th, and the 29th. Those closely mirror the CUTA meetings so that we can coordinate the 2 agreements. We currently have a collective bargaining agreement where under normal circumstances, all the working conditions are laid out specifically for staff. And then we also have an MOU for online instruction. And what we're negotiating now is something different, some kind of a hybrid model, whether it's in a waiver format or if we come back in some conditions under the level red. Just for some clarification, under a waiver, we're required to consult with our unions about their concerns and issues that they bring up with coming back under some kind of a hybrid model. But the state requires that we negotiate with our unions anytime there's a change in working conditions. So if we change the working conditions from the contract that we have agreed to, then we have to come back to the table and negotiate. There's really not a way to implement a waiver without changing the working conditions. For example, we're going to be talking about the instructional day, the length of the day, the starting and ending times, possibly splitting up students into 2 groups, or whether it's in a morning afternoon format or an every other day. So those are all working conditions that by law we have to negotiate. Yeah.
One of the things that I was curious about is, my understanding is the elementary waivers are site by site.
They may be, yes.
Okay, and we saw some very different survey results from parents, from teachers, and from staff at different school sites. So when you're negotiating a union contract, and yet there's only a couple of schools who are actually wanting to go for the waiver. How does that happen?
So we can even negotiate different waivers for different school sites.
Oh,
So,
okay.
with some minor changes depending on what comes out of that school site. So we've had conversations with our principals, depending on the survey results, to go back to their staff and with their parent groups and try to come to some agreement, because again, we're changing working conditions. So we want to have some agreement on the front end so that when we go to the bargaining table, it's much more effective and easier, simpler to reach an agreement if we have buy-in from all the parties. So we know from the data that there are groups of teachers that are interested in doing something at different grade levels maybe, and how that will look at each site may be different, and I would expect it to be different. We currently have MOUs, waivers for parent conferencing and collaboration that are slightly different from school site to school site. So this is something we've done before. So we can be flexible.
Eileen, did you have a question?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, and there may be most of it probably will be common, but there'll be some differences.
Jim, I just I have a concern that if not all of the elementary school sites choose to participate in the waiver, and you've got parents at a site that chooses not to participate, can those parents elect to transfer to another school?
That would be a bigger decision that we'd have to have a conversation on, because that may impact some other areas of the students that are already there. What do you do with them? Because there are class size limits also
That's right.
and we only have so many spots in different schools.
We do have a Form 10 process for inter-district transfers, but that is on space availability, and that would apply here as well.
And
Yeah,
Eileen,
that Form 10 may be the governing tool, because to assess a site that has the waiver as not having room, because in order to add more students, you skew the balance of the size of the cohorts and the size of the AM, PM classes, so that may be something that the district would have to implement, is a strict look at the Form 10 and the impact of accepting movement.
And we
Eileen,
do that now, but this would add a lot of complexity to that for sure.
And parents would have to also take into account, we don't know how long before we go into stage 2 or level red or the next stage. It may be a month, it may be the rest of the year, we just don't know. So they may be making a long-term decision here for just a short amount of time, and that may not be in their interest or their child's interest also. It's just, there's a lot of unknowns.
and Eileen, the principals have started going back already and taking a look at the information they have. If you think of it almost as a mathematical puzzle, to see if the percentages can match up in some way, shape, or form that'll work for those that are interested and those that are interested to come back in person. They've started looking at that, and we'll start actually resurveying and checking again to try to get a more refined accounting of what their families want to do and what their staff wants to do also.
So there's a lot of overlap. There's a significant amount of overlap between coming back in a hybrid model that you had voted on a couple meetings ago and a waiver. So we are negotiating those in tandem because the issues and conditions are very, very similar. We do have a deadline. Our current MOU for online instruction is only good through the end of this calendar year, December 31st, for both union groups. So we would obviously like to have an agreement well before that, and that's what we're working to that end.
Hmm. Wow.
I'm going to take over that. Okay. So where are we at now? So we have, like I said, we had met with CUDA. We have made a lot of CUTA, which is the teachers union. We have met with them once already. We've reached some tentative agreements on some very key issues already. So just to give you an idea how quickly we're moving. Now we can always hit a roadblock with anything, but we do have a very positive relationship with both groups, and so it's been a very constructive and positive process. We've reached some tentative agreements on general areas such as personal protective equipment, face coverings, hand washing, adherence to health department guidelines, physical distancing. We're really, with physical distancing, we're talking about class sizes. There's no way to guarantee that kids are 100% of the time going to be 6 feet apart, but if we have smaller groups, it's much easier to make sure that happens. So we're talking about class sizes, supervision duties, school ingress and egress points, and then not having big group meetings like open house and assemblies. So we've talked about and reached some general agreements on those. Issues that we still have to negotiate on are instructional minutes, health screening, testing and notification, sub-coverage, the CUTA members that work in the after-school program, their coordinators, they're a part of the association. Medical leaves, COVID-19 exposure procedures, and then the duration of the MOU. So we have some work to do, but we've also made quite a bit of progress.
Well, thank you.
Any questions on any of that?
No, thank you for your efforts, you, your team, and the unions as well. Thank you.
So this next slide, I'm going to have Ms. Staley and myself kind of go through our proposal. I want to make sure I'm not talking out of turn.
Sure. So at our last board meeting, we laid out several steps that we would go through, and at each step, we said we would bring it back to the board for approval before moving on to the next step. And we had approval from the board to do step 1, which was survey the school sites. We have done the survey. We have presented those to you, so that is our step 2. Step 3 is an update on the negotiations. Actually, step 3 was we would negotiate with the unions. We are doing that. Step 4 was the update back to the board on those negotiations. Step 5 is where we actually now need board action and approval to move forward. And I think I speak for all of us that we look forward and want to have our students back with their peers, back with their teachers in a safe environment.
Absolutely.
And certainly, we want to find a way for those teachers that want to be back teaching to be able to be with the parents and the students that want to be back. And that is the intent of the waiver, is to try to match that up. There are complexities, which we've been sharing. You know, it is not a straightforward process. But each school site has different data. Each school site has different grade levels where teachers are interested. We could have a school site where, let's say, TK, K, and 1 all want to return to in-person learning. Great. Let's try to find a way to make that happen. That may not be the case at another school site. So with step 5, what we are asking is for the board to charge us to go back and work with individual school sites to find out for each school site, how do we make this work? We know that we cannot force teachers to come back to work when we are in a stage purple. We're now in the color. So we have to do this with people that are volunteering. We also know we can't force students to come back when we're in a stage in the color purple. So it's really going to require cooperation to find a way to make this work.
Also, I just want to add that our principals at our sites believe that they can get out a survey. We've already given them that they can get it out all by Friday, except for Chapman's going to they would take out a new survey to their parents. They believe that they could get a higher number working with their parent organizations and them coming out from their school to get a higher number percentage of parent participation. As you saw, that was pretty low. So we really kind of want to get a true number for that. Also, they believe now that they've been doing volunteer staff meetings to talk to the teachers with their union representatives about what this could mean with safety guidelines, so they're more clear, and we believe that we'll have a more clear number of how many teachers want to come back to work versus not, too, because we had a lot of the schools, a third of their teachers didn't even vote either, so we want to make sure we can get more of a sense. So we think that we can get that done, those surveys done by Wednesday of this next week, to have them turned in. So that's what we're kind of hoping also.
Yes, Kathy?
So I think getting deeper into the weeds, as you're saying, is really, really critical. And we've had communications, some of them personal, about people misinterpreting or misunderstanding or thinking they were answering the question one way to get a certain result. So I absolutely think we need to go back and really encourage them to consider what this means for them. But a lot of the comments that were coming into us had nothing to do with the elementary waiver. And so I just want to state two facts that people may not be aware of. One is that Orange County, way, 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 way bigger than us, tried to go against the state regs, and it went all the way up to the state Supreme Court. And the state Supreme Court said no one can go against the state's regulations for reopening schools, i.e. applying for a waiver. So right now, there's no question that there are no secondary waivers. We are only talking about elementary, which for us is TK to 5. The second is there was a private religious school that was K to 12 in, I want to say Folsom. Fresno, thank you, that tried to go against the health department, and a judge literally shut them down. So we really want to stay, I believe, laser focused on what we can do and try to do it as best as possible with our parents, with our teachers, with our staff. So I say go.
Good points, Kathy. And if I could just jump in,
Yes.
Ms. Griffin. In looking at this step slide 5, I'm seeing at the very bottom that the timeline would be the next meeting. We would get results from both our union negotiations and the surveys would come back to us at the next meeting next month. Is that correct? I want to be clear on the timeline here because
So I do believe that the timeline may be different for each individual school. But
yes.
the goal is to bring surveys back at our next regularly scheduled board meeting, correct?
I see.
Yeah, yes, we met with the elementary principals today for about 2 hours and kind of walked through all the possibilities here, letting them know this is going to be discussed tonight, and just kind of to give them some forewarning about what they might need to be doing moving forward, depending on what the board's will is with this. So several of them are very excited. I have a staff that's very excited to kind of look at how they could take those next steps. We told them possibly we might like to have them have an update ready, not a final draft ready for the October 7th workshop, but also that if they could have something in place by the 21st, that we could move forward at that point with it also, if that was the will of the board also.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, one of the things that I want to stress, and I have to say that this was an idea that I advocated for with the superintendent, because I really do believe that when people design something, they take ownership of it and they want to make it work. And having this type of thing is not a top-down type of order you can give your staff, that you need to put the word out there that we will do everything to help you and to encourage your cooperation and collaboration. But, you know, it's just like with anything else. If you're forced to do it, you know, you may not have the buy-in than if you designed it yourself and you're the one who helped create it. So that was one of the main reasons that I thought this was going to be a good way to approach this. Plus, seeing the results of these surveys, you can look at the surveys in a couple of different ways, and certainly there is support. There's quite a bit of support for parents coming back. However, you do have to take into consideration the number of parents who did not respond. Having a participation rate of 38%, that's just barely over a third. that participated in this. And so we have to find out what that group of people, the additional people, are thinking. We would not be doing justice to all of our parents if we just ignored the other percentage that just didn't take part in this. So another good reason to go about with this approach. So anyhow, that's just really what I wanted to say. And at this point, did you want to proceed with others, or did you want to, how did you want to do this, Ms. Daly?
Well, the remaining steps, would still need to come back to the board. So I think this would be a great time to hear from our public, people that have submitted speaker cards. We do have 3 speaker cards. And I will check with Erica behind me to see if we have anybody who has submitted into the website to see if there's other speakers.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and we'll proceed with the people who signed up to speak with regards to the elementary waiver. And Mr. Shepherd, I think you're...
Okay, I'm calling Matt Tennis. Hello, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, Matt, you are live addressing the Chico Unified School District Board.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Let me mute my phone. I'm not hearing anything on the phone.
Matt, so you
Hello?
should, Matt, can you
Yeah.
hear me? You should just speak
Yes.
speak into your phone. Don't speak into your computer. Speak into your phone.
No, computer's been muted.
Terrific. We can hear
I'm
you. Go
speaking
ahead.
into my phone. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Matt Tennis is my name. I'm the organizer of Chico Parents for In-Person Learning, which now has well over 300 members of parents and other concerned community members who have recognized the importance of in-person learning. And we want to put children first, and we want to get them into the environment that they critically need, and that is a classroom environment where there is in-person school working with the teachers and staff that they know and love. So we are committed to that, and you will continue to hear from us on that until that reality is restored for all the kids in the system. I think the reason why a lot of people did not respond to the survey is because we are completely frazzled out here. And I hear from my constituents, and you've heard from them. I've read your comments. Not a single comment that you guys received in writing against the idea of pursuing a waiver. Every single one of the 12 comments that I see posted on the agenda contains heart-wrenching stories about the need to get kids back in school. Okay? As far as the survey results are concerned, there is a very, very broad majority consensus that both or all 3 parents, teachers, and staff, strong majorities of all those people want to go back to school. In some of your guys' comments and interaction with each other, there were a couple of members who mentioned how, it seemed like there was only a couple of schools where people actually wanted a waiver. That is actually opposite of the truth. If you look at these survey data, which I'm looking at right in front of me on paper, Neal Dow and Chapman are the only schools where certificated staff did not want to go back. Every other single school had strong majority, or at least a simple basic majority of staff, teachers that is, who wanted to go back. And then the classified staff results are even more compelling than that. Even more of those people want to go back. And the parents, I'll just reiterate again, strongly want to go back. I'd like to comment on the CUTA data. And I want to give a little shout out here to Kevin Moretti, because I asked the district for questions 1, 2, and 3 of the survey data, and because those were not initially released to the public, and he informed me of what those questions were, where those teachers, they had to identify themselves for purposes of the CUTA study. That's a problem. Okay, every single one of us knows that that's a problem, and that CUTA data is tainted by the fact that it was not anonymous. Okay, so the district data is much stronger and objective, more objective than the CUTA data. And as far as why some teachers didn't respond, I don't really have an answer for that. But
Mr. Tennis, I'm sorry, your time is up.
So, Mr. Tennis, your time is up, so I'm going to hang up. Thank you for your feedback. Yeah, thank you. Oh, all right, bye. Okay,
We have a Heidi Dousman, I think.
we do. Hi, Heidi, this is John Shepard. You're now unmuted and you are addressing the school board.
Okay, thank you so much. First off, I just want to say thank you for all of our teachers. I know that they're working incredibly hard, especially in the elementary school level, to make sure that these kids are getting as much as they can give them. Unfortunately, though, I feel like in a lot of ways we've checked off a box for our kids. And I don't really think that's fair for them. No one deserves to go through life just checking a box, and we definitely shouldn't be doing that for our kids. They deserve the most that we can give them, and unfortunately, I feel like we aren't giving that to them right now. Their mental health is definitely being impacted. I have a 7, 11, and 13-year-old boys who are very active. Luckily, I have them in a couple other things that keep them going, but my 7-year-old melted down last week, and he's not one to really do that. I held him and asked him what was wrong, and he said, I just really, really miss school, and when is coronavirus going to be over? The recommendations from the CDC, the WHO, and the Pediatric Association all recommend children going back to school. So I see you guys are taking the steps. I just want to ask you to continue fighting the fight, because quite honestly, I'm done with my kids in this program. I'm done with them doing Zooms. I know many other parents are as well and have pulled their kids out. I'm on here tonight because I care about my community and I care about the kids in the community. And I could have saved my energy, but I know how important this is for our kids. And I just want to ask you guys, what happens when these students start leaving? Because I know that we aren't the only ones, and that there are going to be many others who are following and looking for other solutions. So where there's friction, there's opportunity. Either we solve it for our customer or the competition will solve it. So I just ask you guys to keep that in mind, that other solutions are coming and people are looking for other ways to continue education for their kids and to give them the best that we can. Apparently, I'm sorry, but this platform that we have, the Zooms, where it's crashing, the kids are being kicked out, they're being told to email their teacher and they're not being let it back in. It's just not working. And the little ones, they can't handle it. We were just given information on how much they need to turn in per week. For 7 years old, they have to be on the computer doing 4 iReadies, 2 reflex greens, and also 2 AR quizzes a week, on top of submitting their work daily through a system. This is so much for them to do on a computer at 7 years old. Personally, I've been in many virtual trainings, and within a couple hours as a grown woman, it's pretty daunting. But as a 7-year-old child, by 10 a.m., they're just done. They're asking, when can I be done? So for my children, they are, and we're taking them out, and we're looking for other
Thank you,
solutions.
Heidi. Your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
And we have one more, Jody Taylor. I'll be calling Jody now.
Hello, this is Jody.
Hi, Jody. You are now addressing the Chico Unified School District Board.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute the TV.
Hi, Jody. You are now addressing the...
I apologize for that.
No, you're good.
So, my husband and I are parents to 3 elementary age students in the district, and I, like the previous caller, I can tell you that Zoom-based education, distance learning, it just does not even come close to replicating the classroom, and it's not the same. I can't really describe the struggles we're seeing in our kids, all 3 of them. I won't go into detail on that here, but we're seeing social, emotional, behavioral changes in them that we have not seen before. And this is taking an emotional toll on our kids that is very real. So, sorry, I'm emotional about this, but turning my thoughts to the waiver process. So when it comes to the new step 5A in the application, I have 2 points that I'd like to share. The first is, I know the board wants buy-in from families, But let's be realistic. If a huge portion of families didn't respond to the survey, it isn't likely that they'll jump in and get involved in drafting their own school site's reopening plan. It's just not realistically going to happen. And also, I wanted to note that many teachers didn't respond to the survey. So I know you want feedback from everybody and involvement from everybody, but you didn't get it on the survey. I don't know that having them draft the plan is going to bring that about either. The second point I want to make is that I really feel that the district is abdicating its responsibility here in placing the burden of coming up with this plan on individual school sites. The district should be leading here with a plan from the district and outlining a path for students and teachers who want to stay with distance learning and a path for students and teachers who want to plan on returning to classrooms. And then consulting with the school sites on specific items as needed, to fill in the details of the plan. I'm frustrated as a parent. The district did not allow for any individuality from school site to school site when they were planning distance learning. It was everybody on Chromebooks, everybody on the same curriculum, everybody on Zoom. There was no personalization from school to school. But now you're turning it over and giving each school site the chance to just completely customize their return to the classroom. And that feels very scattered and haphazard to me. And I have a problem with it. I feel like you're putting your responsibility as a district on the shoulders of school staff and school families. In closing, I just want to give a shout out to our teachers, though. They are working their tails off for our kids. And I know that many of them want to be back in classrooms. I know our kids want to be back in classrooms, and they need to be. We just need to make this happen.
Thank you, Jody.
And that's
Your
all I have to
time's
say.
up. Thanks.
Thank you, Jody.
So we do not have any others that have left phone numbers for us to call. They have left comments, which we will attach to the agenda as we have the other comments.
Okay. Alrighty. So I guess at this point, what we're discussing is approval and determination of implementation of step number 5.
I do want to address, the comment that Ms. Taylor, our last caller, said. And by no means are we telling the schools, go figure this out. We met with them today to help with this. We will help with all of the safety measures, all of those pieces that we go through. We will do this side by side with them. But due to the drastic differences in the grade level responses, the interests that are from site by site, I could be very wrong, I do not see how you can have a district-wide plan with such variances at each individual school site.
Yes, Kathy.
So I want to urge us to move forward with step 5. I believe that, well, for one thing, I believe we have extremely qualified and engaged leadership at our elementary schools.
Yes.
I think they will very much work with our teachers and our staff. And those teachers can reach out to the parents and encourage them if they didn't respond the first time or if their opinions have changed. People do change their opinions, that they can give feedback. But just in the context of people saying, we're taking our kids elsewhere, the rules that were given were for the entire county, regardless of what kind of a school it was. That's why I gave the citation of the judge who just shut down a private religious school in another county, because that school violated the county health regs, and that was the end of it. So we have to follow those regs, and those regs say site by site. I'm really hoping that we have our district learning group that's been very effective, and our principals working with our own administrators, with TED, that we will get strong leadership about what it is that a school site thinks that they can do with their parents and their staff. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old grandchild. I really want it to happen. But, you know, I'm not in the driver's seat on how that school makes their decision. The parent was. So we live with that.
Kathy, or just to give a little more flavor to it, part of the discussion today with the principals talked about if this was the will of the board to move forward, we would schedule some joint planning sessions with all of them together. So the updates, you would see a lot of comparability with those kinds of things, just to make sure we're addressing all of those elements like Superintendent Staley shared. You would see maybe some slight variation depending on staff interest as far as what they're able to do within the contractual limitations like Mr. Hanlon was sharing also. And that's why there needs to be a little bit of variance, because we do need to match up to what we are able to negotiate with those different groups at those different places. But there's definitely interest, there's definitely desire, there would be a lot of comparability to it, and where we needed to have a little individualization, I think that's where you would see that happening with it.
Yes. Tim?
Yeah, I wanted to clear up, our first speaker mentioned that the CUTA survey was not anonymous. Ours was in fact not anonymous either, that we sent out. It was validated via Google, so they had to have a Chico USD Google account. That was used to double check their answers of where they taught, what their exact position was. So we did have validation that our teachers were, the people answering the survey were our teachers. It was behind a password.
Also within that data that Mr. Karras has sent out to them today is able to break down every parent's grade level that came from. So our principals now will be able to break it down from what grade level that those parents would say would they come back compared to what teachers that we say that we can have come back also. And again, the district office, today it was Superintendent Staley, myself, Director Sullivan, and also Assistant Superintendent Hanlon helping the principals. We've also set up meetings again for next week for us to sit down with them and help them through this process. We're not just leaving them hanging out there. We will continue to support them in any way we can, but they're going to have to be able to know their complexity of their differences from one school to the next, or what grade levels for parents and teachers. But they will get that information to us this next week so we can help them with the waiver process to bring back to you guys.
And as far as the parent participation question, we do have mechanisms, better mechanisms at each school site to communicate with parents. Is that not true? I mean, we have school site councils, we have PTOs, we have targeted case managers who actually go out and visit families.
I think the principals are just kind of waiting to hear your guys' decision tonight to start trying to put some of those mechanisms in place to get the word out, so to speak, and get responses back.
Yeah, so there's a lot more participation. We have had our LCAT meetings, and we have had a good number of parents participating in those as well. And something that they are really wanting to be involved in, if this is an issue that's dear to their hearts, and we set up the right circumstances and provide things like, an opportunity, then I believe we will get the people we need.
Several principals shared also, with them sending home an email, it comes directly from Principal Allen at Chapman, so to speak. He is much more likely to get a response from his Chapman community parents than me sending something to them, because his parents don't know me, but they do know him, and he has a connection with them. So if he's sending something out looking for information from them, they're much more likely to be responding to him on that personal level with those things.
Right, and another thing I just want to mention is, we had a speaker who indicated that there were over 300 people who were supporting his efforts to get people back in school. So this would really be a great opportunity for them to participate with their local school that their children attend to help with this effort, because they're very interested, and they should be voicing what they would like to have happen. So I would highly encourage them to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Eileen.
No, that's okay. I was just waiting for my turn. I'm not surprised that everybody isn't in the same pattern for getting this implemented. I mean, that's why our schools are different. That's why we have Form 10s, is people pick and choose what fits best. So I'm not bothered at all wanting to make everybody the same. Please, no, don't. Do exactly what you've done by going to the sites and the principals and saying, you know, let's do what this school and this staff and these parents want. I just fully support the anonymity of our different school sites, our school site populations. I don't see anything on the step 5 waiver process that I feel a need to modify. If it's appropriate and a motion is in order, Madam President, I'd like to move that we direct staff to move forward with completion of step 5 with a report back at the next regularly scheduled CUSD meeting if that timeline still is appropriate.
I second that, and I will specify October the 7th.
Okay, so we have a motion by Eileen Robinson, a second by Dr. Kaiser, with the specification that we have this come back to us at the October 7th meeting. Any further discussion from people? Linda, anything else you'd like to say?
I have agreed with all your comments, and I would just like to see this go forward. So we'll get some more data and make this process move along. So I agree. Let's go.
Okay, so I will go ahead then and call for the vote. All those in favor of moving forward with step number 5 with the report back on the 7th, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. So we will move forward with that, and really looking forward to hearing what all the schools have to say and how they see themselves moving forward with this waiver if they decide to do so.
Madam President, may I, approving step 5 leads into step 6 is what we will be facing on the 7th of October, correct?
Ms. Daly?
On October 7th, we will come back with an update from each school as well as the survey data from each school site. I think that, you know, that's 2 weeks away. If there are school sites that have plans ready to bring forward, we can certainly bring those forward at that point. I think the school sites were looking at their target date was the regular October board meeting.
Okay, but we will leave the door open.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if you've got people who are highly motivated and they want to move forward with this, we will definitely take that under consideration at that next meeting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that, Eileen. All right, so our next item is the public hearing discussion action on the Williams textbook sufficiency for the 2021 school year. And this comes before us every year.
It does, it does. So Education Code Section 60119 requires that each pupil within the Chico Unified School District be provided sufficient textbooks and instructional materials aligned to the content standards and consistent with the cycles and content of the curriculum frameworks in the areas of history and social science, mathematics, reading and language arts, and science. So the attached certification of provision of standards-aligned instructional materials states that we are currently sufficient for the 2020-21 school year. As such, the Ed Services Department requests approval of resolution number 1524-20.
Madam President,
Yes.
I move approval of.
We need to open a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Are you-
Okay,
you wanna
before.
open the hearing?
Okay.
Okay, open the hearing.
All right, this one we always kind of, it's such a unusual little item. I'll open up the public hearing for anyone to make any comments about this, the Williams Act, so in the textbook sufficiency.
So they need to call John Fong, is that correct?
No, they have to submit through the website.
Oh,
And I believe we did have a mechanism
We
to
did.
do that earlier on.
And I at least
There's no
received.
speaker request for this one.
Okay, so there's no speaker request, so it would just be a matter of, we can talk about it and then close the public hearing, and then we will take our vote. So if you want to comment on it at all, yeah, Kathy?
So I had just asked this question as a clarification, and I got an answer, but I'd like to present it publicly. In the resolution, in the second paragraph to the bottom, it says, whereas laboratory science equipment was available for science laboratory classes offered in grades 9 through 12. So maybe we just give a clarification to what we mean about that.
Yes, thank you. I can do that. So the challenge lies in, we are in an online learning delivery platform now, knowing though that we could be shifting to in-person. So a resolution like this needs to cover all of that.
Okay.
So the system that we have set up right now does have the standards-based labs available to students. If we are able to go back in person, we also have those labs available. So the language in the resolution covers both.
All right, thank you. So with that, I would second Eileen's motion.
Okay, any further discussion around this? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will take a vote. This was a motion by Eileen Robinson, a second by Dr. Kaiser. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. And our next item is going to be a discussion action with regards to the learning continuity and attendance plan. Tina Keen.
And before Ms. Keene starts her presentation, I do want to again remind our public that if you would like to comment, make a public comment on this, there's two ways to do that. You may go to our website, chicousd.org, and under public comment at chicousd.org, you can submit your name, phone number, and the item you want to address, in this case, the learning continuity plan. If you leave your phone number, we will call you back and allow you to address the board verbally, or you can leave written comments and we will attach those to the agenda item.
Okay.
And before you start, I want to compliment Tina, because with this plan, which was a new requirement by the state with an extremely short timeline, she has included a translation into Spanish. And so I really appreciate that that was provided to our families so that they would be able to understand and participate fully. So thank you, Tina.
Good evening. You're welcome. My pleasure to do that. That's important. I do have a slide presentation that we'll go over here. Erica will pull this up. I am back with the Learning Continuity Plan. I was here September 2nd for the public hearing part. This is tied to compliance, and I'll talk about that as we start out, but the public hearing is part of that compliance and then coming around again for the final approval at the second board meeting. Actually, the slides. This is the plan. Looks like this.
It's not plain nice.
No, it should look like this one. Mm-hmm. Thank you for your patience, everybody. Share with Erica Smith. No. Do you want me to log in on you, John?
Good job, Tina.
This better be really good after all that wait. So I apologize for that. All righty. So, again, number 2 round here. In the meantime, between the 2nd and the 16th today, I've had the great fortune of sharing this with many of our site councils, a large handful, and have had some more to go to. That has been really fun because the site councils this year have had a great turnout of people, and it's been fantastic to provide this to them, see their input, talk, and just generally talk with parents and staff. So a little background on this plan. Back in June, Senate Bill 98 was passed, and that added a number of provisions to the Ed Code regarding instruction during the 2021 school year. One of these provisions is Ed Code 43509, which, among other things, requires all districts and charter schools to draft and adopt a learning continuity plan. This plan requires a detailed description of the ways the district will address many issues related to in-person and distance learning. Now, I don't want this to be confused with our LCAP, even though the acronym is virtually the same. Typically, every school year in the spring, we involve a large group of folks from our sites, including family members, staff, parents, counselors, you name it, board members. And we have quite a lengthy process to develop our LCAP plan, which contains our funding attached to the goals that we have for our district. This year is a little bit different in that we do not have that typical LCAP plan, so Senate Bill 98 kicked off this piece of it. And it is a very quick turnaround. As I said, it was approved to have this in June. The template that we all have to follow, all of the districts and charters, as it is a compliance document that everybody must adhere to, the template was released August 1st, and everything has to be approved after a public hearing by September 30th. So a very quick timeline to turn it around as we start school and don't know how long we will be in this mode of COVID. So it's a little bit tricky that way, and to share it with all of our stakeholders to see where we're at right now is it's great, and it truly is a snapshot of what we have in place to go forward, but where we are now, and if we need to adjust and move, how we do that. So to highlight some of the pieces of the plan, one of them is how the district will provide continuity of instruction during the school year to ensure pupils have access to a full curriculum of substantially similar quality, regardless of delivery method. A plan for ensuring access to devices and connectivity, and that means for students and staff. Professional development is addressed and the resources that will be provided to staff, including technological support. How the district will address pupil learning loss that resulted from COVID-19 during the 2019-20 and 2021 school years. I think I did mention at our previous board meeting, but it's very important to mention it again, that this plan actually does backtrack a little bit to March when we were ordered to go into online learning. We had to very quickly turn around the way that we had instruction then, and we know that pupil learning loss started truly back in that time frame and not exactly right as we started this school year. And the plan must be approved by the local board by September 30th after a public hearing has been held. So there were additions and corrections to the plan after talking and sharing with stakeholders and getting input. We also worked with Jeanette Spencer from Butte County Office of Education. She is a great resource and support to all of our schools in our county and knows just a little bit more than I do, and she would probably tell you she's just a little step ahead because, again, this is something that's come up very quickly upon everybody, and we're all doing our best to put our heads together to do this correctly. So I have these addressed for you. I did provide board members and our superintendent and assistant superintendent the updated copy of the plan, but what I'm doing here, and it's typical that we do this during our LCAP, when we make additions or corrections, we come back after the public hearing and we have the changes listed and the pages you can find that. So that's just a quick reminder back to last year's LCAP when Tim and I presented that at that point. So in-person learning, I shifted some of the actions from contributing to not contributing. And again, these are based on recommendations from the county and our stakeholders. What that means is in that section on pages 11 through 13 are our funding sources listed. And contributing actions and not contributing mean exactly if the action, the funding for the action contributes to the actual learning for the students or not. Now an example would be PPE, protective personal equipment, or personal protective equipment, versus a curriculum. So under Jeanette's guidance, that became very clear. The online learning program, there were some pieces that were added there. We added specific language about Aries attendance documentation on page 18. Again, just to make it more specific and honing in on the details that were not there before. There was added language about professional development continuing based on staff needs. Previously, we talked about the professional development we have had in the last month, 6 weeks, but the importance of continuing forward with that professional development, basing that on the needs of our staff as we go through the upcoming weeks and what all that entails. There is added language about students with 504 plans receiving support on page 23. We wanted to make sure that was very clear as we talked about students. And shifted, again, some actions from contributing to not contributing. In-person learning is one section, online learning is another section, so that's why that shows up in there. The funding shows up in both pieces. We also are fortunate to have a good relationship with our EL lead for Butte County Office of Education, and she happened to tune into the public hearing and contacted me after with some feedback as well, which was great. So I added more specific language about continuing to partner with BCOE, the EL lead, to share resources for our English learners, and added details about faculty and staff meetings to review assessment to determine effective remediation or acceleration. On the emotional health and social and emotional well-being section, we added the importance of administration, and I would probably add at this point, everybody on a site, checking in often with staff for continued support and open arms. For our pupil and family engagement and outreach, there was the addition of references to each site's re-engagement policy. I've been in connection and talking with our principals to make sure that they have their steps laid out or their flow chart, whatever it may be, but making sure that all of the steps are sequential and an anchor to hold the site accountable to making sure that they follow all the steps to re-engage students if we see that they are not engaging. Under school nutrition, there was an addition of heating instructions and weekly menus available to families. Those were specifically important, those instructions. We do know that some kiddos pick up the meals without families, maybe with them, and those instructions come in handy for them. And the last part, the increased or improved services for foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. There were additional details put in there about how the percentage required will support foster youth, English learners, and low-income students. So those were the additions that have made it into this revision for us tonight. And I'll take any questions here. Our next steps would be, upon approval, the Learning Continuity Plan will be shared with Butte County Office of Education and then posted as approved LCP on our CUSD website in English and Spanish. Currently, it is on there as a draft in English and Spanish.
Yes, Kathy?
Yeah, I note that the issue of attendance is if a student checks in, then they're counted. And we had several parents who were concerned that the student was checking in and then mentally checking out. I mean, okay, I was here. There was even a cartoon about it at one point where the zebra just had a reproduction of its face and would just stick it up so the teacher would see it and then take it down. So I know we're doing what the state told us, but are teachers able to sort of follow along and see that the kid is actually disengaging? I mean, do we have, a little better than just a check-in?
I think we do. Ted might want to join in as he talks to the principals or John a little more often than I do. But from what I am hearing, the teachers are really looking at students engaging and not, and using the staff on their school site who know the kids and who know the families to reach out. Okay. John, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so and Ted can address elementary. For secondary, there are also multiple other measures of engagement, including the asynchronous time. So the same day that students check in with their teachers, if they need more follow-up, they can do that during the asynchronous time. And then the platforms that we're using, it's not just Edgenuity, but the other platforms as well, also gauge engagement. To the data point that we can, any administrator can pull up screenshots of how long students have been, they've been logged in, but then within that time, how much idle time is attributed to the student. So there are multiple ways of measuring engagement.
Okay. Good, thank you.
And elementary uses, really it's teacher feedback, and they have wellness teams right now that are kind of looking at how much students are actually interacting with teachers. Are they turning work in? Are they showing up for their Zoom sessions? And if they're feeling like this is a student that is a little bit AWOL right now, they're not as connected, not participatory, that's becomes part of the wellness team thing, and everything from principal visits to home to check in, TCM visits, calls, all those ways to make sure they're connected, or to see what's getting in the way of helping them stay connected with those things.
I remember that one parent made a comment about, I mean, when they do the background and they can see all the kids in there, then they get really, they get a chance to at least say something or send something. I know my kids, the teacher would let them share something, a small group. And then others were saying the kids were turning that off, and I think she said then her daughter was the last one on, and so then it was, so I didn't know if that was showing up with other kids or.
Actually, I was just talking with a teacher from Rosedale today, and she actually has built into her day a 5-minute check-in with like 5 students a day, where they just have a time to chat with each other for 5 minutes every day, and it kind of rotates through, and that's one of the ways that she helps them to kind of keep connected with each other, keep connected with school, and she just felt it was a great way for them to be in touch with each other still.
I just think the more ways we can distribute and encourage that that kind of personal touch, I see you, I hear you, I like your mask, whatever.
Okay, was that, yes, Tom?
Sorry, just because my comment kind of rolls out of Kathy's, Dr. Kaiser, sorry. We've talked about making sure building into the secondary system more ways for direct instruction over Zoom and flexibility for teachers to move away from Edgenuity and use some of their own content to engage with the students in the actual process of education. Can you tell us kind of where that's at?
I would love to. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Oh, I always will.
Thank you. So last week we finalized a process for teachers to regain some of the autonomy that they so cherish right now. And we've heard it from parents, we've heard it from teachers, we've heard it from administrators, and we've heard it from kids in Zooms, speaking with kids. And we heard it tonight. As of this afternoon, I've received 34 course online adapted proposals, and those have been approved. That was, again, it was finalized late last week. People worked on them over the weekend. So the process is for teachers to create, and it's a systemic process. We do not want to go back to where we were last spring, where it was just all over the place, even though teachers only had 2 days for the shift. And then those proposals go to their department chair for high school and department lead for middle school, then go to the principals, then to ed services, and we have yet to not turn one back around within the same school day. So the process has been expedited, and implementation is happening.
I want to add,
That's
part of
excellent news.
part of that process is driven by SB 98 and the requirements that we have for accounting for instructional minutes, as well as daily syllabi. So that form is actually very detailed. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, to be compliant, and number two, to ensure that we are have course-alike teachers on the same pathway moving forward.
And I do want to add, while it is very detailed, we do have many coaches that are coaching teachers through that process. So as I said, we have yet to not turn one right back around. Even though the form is detailed and we have some requirements we must meet, we are turning those right back around.
I would like to add one last thing, and I appreciate your comment and question, Tom, because this is one of the frustrating parts with this timeline, is that we don't have a lot of time to get a plan, see if it's working, adjust if we need to based on feedback, and get it going. So this is a perfect example of, you put a plan in place, and then you make changes and shifts as needed to support folks. So just a little piece to keep in mind with the September 30th deadline of an approval. There are still obviously kinks that we're working out to better what we do.
Ted, will you step in between John and Tim? No, don't go anywhere. I want you all to give each other a high five right now. That was amazing that you got that together. Tina, high five him. Hit him on the back if you have to, because we've had so many parents and students who have wanted some evidence that we were being innovative by the strength and the power of our own teachers, and you just showed it.
And on that note, one of our Pleasant Valley teachers invited some of us to watch Miss Baynard's, I believe it was IB English 12, I want to say, and it was great. The kids were really engaged. I stepped into a couple of the small rooms, the small breakout rooms with them. They were engaged. They seemed happy to be there. They were talking with her. It was a much closer facsimile of what a classroom model looked like, and it was really inspiring to see. So shout out to her. Thank you very much for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks for that report. That was good to hear. Okay, so before we take any action on this, we do have some speakers who want to make comments.
Yes, I believe that we have 4 speakers. Mr. Oberle sent us an updated phone number, and we have Mr. Tennis, Ms. McGregor, Ms. Isherwood, and Mr. Oberle.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, and all these speakers are aware that they are speaking specifically about this item?
They're speaking to the learning continuity plan.
Okay, because I know Mr. Oberle called about the other thing.
So Superintendent Staley, my understanding with Mr. Oberle was he would speak during item number 9, items for the floor.
That's
Oh,
fine.
Does that
okay,
work?
so that's important to know. So we will wait until that. But he's still speaking on something that wasn't on this agenda.
Okay, we'll go ahead with Mr. Matt Tennis. I'll be calling him now. Hello, Mr. Tennis?
Yes.
Okay, you are addressing the Chico Unified School District Board.
Thank you so much again, Matt Tennis, Chico Parents for In-Person Learning. I want to acknowledge the work, Ms. Keene, that you did in putting this together, and I understand that we are in extraordinary circumstances right now, and that's the whole reason that you and staff are even in a situation where we're having to scramble to deal with the COVID pandemic, which is a serious thing. But there is a gaping hole in this document, regrettably, that I think makes it almost totally worthless. And that gaping hole is that there's no commitment on the part of the school district to report publicly. And you guys, just in general, in this LCP process or without this LCP process, we are not getting any accurate or timely participation data on how many kids are actually participating in their Zoom calls. The standards for participation actually are incredibly low by comparison to the old days when, you know, kids had to actually be attending school and not cutting class and stuff like that in order for, you know, for the school district to get paid. I'm not an expert on how that works, but it was important that people actually be there. Now, if a child, in my reading of this, if a child simply calls in at any point in time during the day, they qualify as having participated. We need to at least know what the level of participation of kids is on an ongoing basis, because I have a theory that a lot of families are steadily not participating at all and are increasingly dropping off the face of the earth. Secondly, I think that there needs to be an application process publicly available for the Workday Child Supervision Program that you speak about on page 24. So if that program is available, there are the protected classes of kids who are in great need, and we know that they're getting hit the hardest by this debacle. So we need to make available to them an application process. And I think that you should also amend it to say that you will commit to making participation data available to the community as soon as possible. We need transparency. So thank you very much.
Okay, next is Kelly McGregor.
Hello, this is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. You are now addressing the Chico Unified School District Board.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Shepherd. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. It was after conversations with many students, fellow parents, and respected teachers that I decided to share my thoughts with you. My two sons, a freshman and a junior at PV, and I were thrilled when we heard that not only were teachers being allowed to adjust content in Edgenuity, they were being given the opportunity to fully teach their own courses. Then I learned of the requirements for the teachers to move out of Edgenuity, a list so far-reaching as to make it nearly impossible for many teachers to achieve. If not impossible, at least it has proven to be very discouraging. The number of 34 submissions certainly illustrates this. One teacher referred to it as being given a free trip to New York City. The only caveat, you have to walk there. I fear these actions are an attempt at saving face with the parents at the expense of the teachers. I hope you revise the requirements using an equity lens. Please do not require teachers to provide exhaustive evidence of their teaching plans to be allowed to move out of Edgenuity when this wasn't required of teachers who never started in the first place. And it was not required of elementary teachers who, in my opinion, have been quite successful in their Zoom classrooms, as evidenced by the experience of my 4th grade daughter at Marigold. Please use the purchases of a wide variety of new technology referenced on page 15 of the Learning Continuity Plan to, and I quote, support teachers who are being asked to deliver high quality and engaging instruction entirely online. Use the future professional development trainings mentioned on pages 22 and 23 and budgeted on page 25 to bring teachers up to speed in online teaching pedagogy and techniques. Please make this process easier for teachers to teach their own courses. Support those that need it. You have the resources. Our teachers are qualified, not to mention award-winning professionals. They are being paid to teach. They want to teach. If they think they can meet student needs better than Edgenuity, they can. I would bet on them every time, and I hope you will too. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. And we have Aaron Isherwood.
Hello, this is Erin.
Hello, this is the Chico Unified School District, where you are now addressing the Chico Unified School District Board.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time, everyone. I have two children in the Chico Unified School District. My son is an 8th grader at Marsh, and my daughter is a junior at Pleasant Valley High School. I understand completely that we're in a unique position with education right now. We're all trying our best and have honorable intentions. However, the district's learning continuity plan's usage of Edgenuity should not be approved tonight. Your community is begging for a better solution. I disagree with the most recent 3 minutes ago high fives on the success of customization of Edgenuity. Even with those recent modifications and customizations, my 4.0 8th grader and 4.2 GPA junior, they're still struggling and experiencing learning loss. I can't imagine what it would be like for a student who has a hard time with school in general. Edgenuity is isolating our students from their teachers and peers at a time when they crave and need personal connection the most. Edgenuity is causing my formerly motivated children anxiety, depression, discouragement, and stress. I know this is similar for a lot of children and not just my own. I understand Edgenuity was a response to the community's request for more continuity and rigor from the spring semester. However, using Edgenuity was an egregious overcorrection. Unfortunately, the comment in the previous board meeting on September 2nd was that there were no complaints with Edgenuity with the Oak Bridge student population. Let me be clear, comparing Oak Bridge students with PV and Marsh and any of the secondary schools is a false analogy and a hasty generalization. Oak Bridge students do not learn the same way as our students do. The expenditure for this program is a gross misuse of state funding that can be better used to enhance Google Classroom and Zoom learning experience where our kids can learn from their own teachers and not a stranger in a video. As of right now, the petition asking the district to get rid of Edgenuity has close to 2,000 signatures, and it's growing still daily. This petition is over 2 weeks old, and you're still asking for help, even with recent customizations. Those high fives were premature. You're not done yet. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so that was the group of people who had signed up to talk. Did any staff want to respond to anything that was brought up? Okay, because at this point then, if not, we will, yeah, I'm sorry, Eileen.
You didn't ask if there was board response.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
One of the callers was talking about the monitoring and verification of attendance and engagement as being missing from being, available to the public. I do not feel that's a correct analysis of what Ms. Keene presented in conjunction with what Ted Sullivan also presented, that there is a tremendous amount of attention being paid by teachers that are monitoring those very issues. And if there is a problem found, there are supports in place at the school sites to involve other staff on the site, the targeted case manager, the principal at the elementary level especially, and that the ability of a parent to monitor this issue through the use of ARIES and going online to look at what the teacher is reporting about course completion and assignment completion and stuff, that ability to monitor by each family is there within the system. So I don't feel that our LCAP is in need of anything beyond what we're already doing. I think we've fully, you can't fully in the circumstances we're in, that's not what I mean, but to the extent possible, we are making that effort, knowing, for years, our focus has been keeping a child in school and engaged, because the loss otherwise of even a couple of absences a month can equate to, missing a whole school year at the end of their education. So that has been a focus. It's a focus of our teachers. It's a focus of our administrators, and I believe our report represents that pretty fully.
Thank you, Eileen. Tom?
Thank you. I share the concern of some of the callers about the use of Edgenuity. Having taught both an independent study context and in a regular classroom context, they are very different groups of learners. And we, as one of the earlier callers said, have a great resource in our teachers. They're experts. And I would like to add some kind of language to this that identifies our goal, or a goal, of moving as much as possible away from Edgenuity and toward that. And I understand that we need to keep a baseline, and that we need to keep a baseline of equal access for everybody, and that Edgenuity represents that in some ways. But I do think it is important that we agree and make a statement that our teachers are the best educators we've got for our students, not Edgenuity. I have nothing against the use of Edgenuity as an umbrella, or I should say a floor, perhaps. But I would like to see some language that specifically directs us to move towards more customized and teacher-led instruction.
And I don't think we disagree with that at all. When the board voted on July 15th, our whole momentum was moving back to in-person learning combined with online instruction that was teacher-driven. And then when we had 2 weeks before the start of the school year, we had to have something, because we heard from over 4,000 parents that the Zoom and the instruction where they might hear from a teacher one day a week, and that was it, read the chapter, answer the questions. They might hear from a teacher 5 or 6 times a day, getting emails and instructions, really that wanting to connect, that there needed to be some continuity. And that was the attempt here. I will tell you, I don't think any of us thought we would be here this long. We really had hoped we would already be back and able to do AM, PM at best, be back in that stage 2, so that we could be seeing our kids, providing those emotional supports, providing the academic support, the things that our teachers are trained to do. But not all of our teachers are trained to deliver instruction via technology. And it is very frustrating for our kids, for our parents. It's frustrating for all of us. When you listen earlier, Zoom is failing us. They're crashing. My kid can't access it. So, I think the idea behind Edgenuity was certainly to give something that was accessible, a steady platform. And now that we are going to be in it longer, absolutely, that's the work that Mr. Shepard has been doing. Let's make sure that we still have continuity of education, which is exactly what this plan is requiring us to do. But yes, we want our teachers that feel comfortable and want to do that, presenting and sharing and working with their kids. Absolutely.
So the one comment that was made about all of these steps, you have to take in order to be able to adapt your lesson plans and whatever, so, to get away from using Edgenuity, 40 steps or some amount. What validity is there in that
So
statement?
there are some steps that teachers who are going to completely shift from an Edgenuity-based course to a Google Classroom-based course, for example. We still need to ensure that the standards that were embedded in the course when it was originally board approved would still be in that course moving through the rest of this semester and next year. So when people look at the form, they see that requirement, but what's explained to them when they start meeting with their administrators is it's not very difficult for them to identify the standards, which we provide links to. They really just need to provide a link to the standards and then describe in their form how those standards are going to be delivered. So it can visually, I could understand how it can be daunting, but once those conversations start, I received one today that had a link to the standards for AP Calculus, and then they just described how they're going to deliver those standards. So
So it sounds to me like maybe a little bit more information should be put out there in the way of communication from the principals or whoever that, you know, this is, it may look really onerous, but there can be, you know, there are ways to tackle this which are not so burdensome, because you have gotten a number of people who have mastered this and have turned these in, and it's certainly progressing, you know, along. But to get more people on board, you know, I would say anything we can help with that is.
Yeah, just to reinforce too that our speakers wouldn't know that there's a frequently asked questions supporting doc that goes out with it. There are links on that document that go out, and so people wouldn't know that. And I don't know when the speaker talked with the teacher, but we've been responding to those needs as well. For example, originally we said we need a year-long plan because we want to be sure that two teachers teaching the same course who had addressed standards differently, regardless of how they addressed them differently, that all the standards would be included within a year-long course. But in the last 3 days, we realized that we can actually step that process in. We can ask teachers first to, individually, we can talk with them about getting that first semester in and then working through that second semester, not knowing where we're going to be second semester.
Not only that, but isn't a lot of this mandated by SB 98?
Absolutely.
I mean, this isn't something we invented.
And that's what I wanted Tim to address, that a part of this is we do have to account for the amount of time spent, both asynchronous and synchronous time. So do you want to just briefly give some of the
Yeah, SB 98 came out over the summer, and I think about 3 weeks ago now, CDE came out with their suggested way of meeting the requirements brought about by SB 98 regarding accounting for instructional minutes, accounting for course content, taking attendance, measuring engagement, et cetera, and we, as a group, I think we all agree that CDE guidance, the original guidance would be, we're trying to it would be a horrendous load on teachers. And so what we're trying to do in our systems is meet the requirements of the law, but put as little as we can on our teachers. And as an example of that, the CDE document that came out a few weeks ago had teachers doing this all on paper, writing their class roster, documenting their lesson plans every day of the week, et cetera, every week that we're engaged in distance learning. We think that it's better product if we get that planning up front and we have that documentation from the get-go. So teachers aren't, we want teachers teaching and thinking about teaching and not recording things as much as we possibly can as they work.
Yes, Kevin.
Well, just a clarification, as a reminder, funding is not driven by attendance this year. Our funding is based on our prior year. So this is really a compliance issue, and certainly is a challenge related to compliance, because we'll still go through an audit, and there's still potential for penalties if it's not done correctly. But I just want to clarify to the board, to the public, it's not onerous for the point of trying to generate revenue. That's been established in a different manner.
Okay, thank you.
But that's correct. We don't know what penalties may be applied if we are not in compliance.
I would like to add one more thing real quickly, if I could, and it kind of expands a little bit on what Superintendent Staley had mentioned about the word continuity. And one of the things I've learned in this process is, through our county lead, is that this plan should really, for everybody, it should reflect the movement from in-person learning to online learning and perhaps back to in-person learning, because we don't know which way things are going to go, and we certainly don't know how long we will be in each of these kinds of learning pieces. So with the spirit and flavor of in-person learning, what that looks like, as we had thought in our hybrid model would be, to online. If we then go back and forth, hopefully we do not go back and forth. Hopefully we're on the positive way out of this. But that piece of the continuity word is what the CDE meant.
Okay, gosh, there was such a long discussion there, I sort of forgot where we were in this, but I guess we're, okay, so Tom, your main concern was having
I would like,
some acknowledgement of,
and I'm looking at top of page 11 here in the plan, where it seems we could add some language, just says something like, teachers will be encouraged and assisted to transition to direct instruction over Zoom with the understanding that is the preferred method of building community and maintaining emotional and social health with our students. Some language to that effect that indicates that we are aware of that and that is how we're moving.
I would support that. Would that be a very difficult thing to add in at this point, Tina?
No, not at all.
Okay, I think that's very appropriate. It's just really acknowledging that what's something we all are, behind, and we do want that to happen. And it's just, we want to make sure that we are doing everything that we need to do.
I just think we need to be very clear that not all teachers will feel comfortable or pursue that. We do have some teachers that are very comfortable with Edgenuity and like that flipped classroom approach. We have other people that have had very bad experiences, even some verbal abuse on Zoom, and so that is not where they want to be. We're trying to provide other resources, but I do think, the goal, we want teachers teaching kids, absolutely.
And that's why the preferred language would say something like encouraged. So I'm certainly not going to lay down a fiat that says you have to, because, again, teachers have different levels of familiarity and comfort with the Zoom process.
Okay, so Tina, do you have an idea of sentence that you could possibly add that would reflect what Tom is suggesting?
So I think I captured it, but please add more. Teachers will be encouraged, page 11. Yeah, teachers will be encouraged and supported in moving toward more involvement, or?
I would say encouraged and supported in developing teacher-driven, teacher-facilitated instruction. I'm just trying to get the
Is that
development
capturing
of it.
what you're thinking?
Can we say in their efforts? So it's not a mandate that every single one of them do this. Yeah, it's just, encourage and support it. I mean, we're giving them support.
In developing teacher-led
Teacher-developed curriculum and instructional methods. I think we need to include not just the delivery, but also the development of the curriculum, because that's really what drives that teacher.
Okay, so let me see if I captured this. Teachers will be encouraged and supported in developing teacher-developed curriculum and delivery methods. Did I get that?
Does that
Works for
work?
me.
Does that work?
Kelly, did you think that meets the? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, how does everyone else feel about that? Because I think we're at the point where we should be voting on this. And if and if that's the only change, then we could approve it on the basis of with stipulating that we would like that inserted at
Certainly.
that point. So I would need a motion.
You got it.
The action to approve the learning continuity and attendance plan.
Okay, with the addition.
changes.
With the additional phrase.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dr. Kaiser, a second by Tom Lando, and unless anybody has something else to say or contribute, we'll take a vote. Yes, Kelly?
So I was worried about this. So Mr. Oberly did reach out and say what we're talking about right now is what he wanted to address. And since we did try to contact him earlier, I do think we need to give him that opportunity
Okay.
to
I agree.
speak.
Let's do that.
Okay, I'm calling him right now.
I'm here.
She's here.
Hello, Mr. Oberly. Thank you for your patience. You are now addressing the Chico Unified School District Board. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to address the Edgenuity thing. I know you guys have already sound like you made up your minds and stuff, and you know, it's a difficult situation for everybody. But my experience is I have two kids, both in Chico High School, going through a lot with the loss of one of my daughter's teachers, as you heard earlier in the thing. And just it's a difficult situation for everyone, and I completely understand that. I've been a teacher for 27 years now. I teach at Butte College. I used to teach at the high school level down in Southern California. And just my observations on Edgenuity are nothing that hasn't been said before. It's just I have two honor students who've never gotten anything less than an A. They're really hard workers. They're really good students in class, and they thrive, of course, in the face-to-face, as we all know. I know that's not a possibility right now, so that's not what I'm saying. But the quizzes in there are tedious. They're too specific. The ideas do not flow from one idea to another. There's no connection made. And I understand completely from the teacher's point of view why they would not want to go through the process that was outlined by you. And I understand you guys have, you know, some T's to cross and I's to dot as well. But I think, you know, the online format, you know, was not ideal in the spring. I get that. I get the concern that parents had in the spring, but you know, the teachers didn't have any training and stuff, and that's probably what summer would have been good for, is kind of train on Google Classroom, Google Meet, or whatever, and hopefully with, you know, this kind of an out that some of my kids' teachers are not going to do just because of the stress of the paperwork involved is not acceptable. So I want our teachers to teach, and Edgenuity is just, it's sucking the life out of my kids' love for learning. And that's just, as an educator, I'm very upset about that. And I just want to leave you with the quote, education is not the filling of a pail, it is the lighting of a fire. And that's what our teachers provide. Edgenuity does not. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for participating. Okay, so we're ready now, I believe, to take a vote. So this is, once again, approval of this plan with the addition of the sentence that Tom suggested. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, that is approved. All right, so the next item we have is, I believe, because Mr. Oberly was the only one who called in for items from the floor, that takes care of that. Any other announcements that people might have? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone, so it appears that we are able to adjourn. We are adjourned.
Thank you.